and welcome to Confidently Compliant, a food safety podcast by BRCGS. My name is Paula Parejo, and I'm from the BRCGS team. For those of you who don't know BRCGS, we are a GFSI benchmark program owner that have standards beyond food safety. We also have standards in consumer products, ethical, plant-based, gluten-free, packaging, agents and brokers, retail, and storage and distribution. Today, we will be reviewing a case study with a co-packaging site that is certified under the BRCGS storage and distribution standards with amazing commercial success and a AA grade. I would like to introduce Patrick Paradis, CEO of Abeilles Busy Bees from Quebec, Canada. Welcome, Patrick, to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on this show. This is my first podcast, by the way.
Amazing. Well, we're going to have lots of fun today, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting to know your story because it's a pretty cool one. So, Patrick, again, I'm so excited that you're here today, and you have a very unique situation, and I think that listeners can really benefit from learning what certification can do for different businesses and how it really does support all areas of the supply chain. So if we could get started with you telling me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Busy Bees.
Yeah, I would say that I'm from international background, so I used to travel all my life. 30 years ago, started a business called Geolong International. We used to import goods from China, and we have offices around the world, China, Thailand, Vietnam, mostly in Latin America as well. And along the way, 5 years ago, an opportunity came up with our customer would love to transfer some of the goods into Canada and having us to do co-packing. And I never heard about the word co-packing before. And this company, Busy Bee, Abeilles Busy Bee, started in 30 years ago as well by the name Nicole Paradis, was the owner. It was a coincidence, by the way. My name Paradis and Paradis, and it's the same name. But coincidentally, we finally purchased the company 5 years ago. And how does it start? This company starts by a woman named Nicole, and her boyfriend, they have an issue on having their goods co-pack in their own facility. So she said, why don't you transfer me the goods and we're going to start assembly the parts and pieces at home. So that's why the name of the company used to call Abeilles au foyer, which is mean Abeilles Busy Bees at home. And these people, They used to start manufacturing and co-packing their goods into their own place. And from there, she rented a few buildings and started the company this way.
Okay. That's not the kind of background I was expecting. That's really interesting. So how exactly, what motivated you to get involved, really?
But in fact, I had no other options, because a lot of pressure from our customers saying, why don't you have a warehouse in Canada? Why don't you have a warehouse in Montreal? So starting from scratch, renting a place from scratch without ERPs and knowledge of co-packing would be tremendous amount of work. So we started Google it and looking for what could be done as co-packing, manufacturing, and we found few companies, and Busy Bees was at a good timing for selling.
Yeah, definitely. It's so funny because as a regular consumer, you don't really think about it, of how things are packaged, because when you go into the bigger retail stores, the ones that particularly sell in bulk, and you have all that beautiful packaging so that way you can have 10 items in one fun package. It's you don't really think about how is it actually produced. I would have always thought it would have been in one site. I never even knew co-packing sites existed or co-packaging sites existed. So it's such a niche for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, to make it easy to understand, a multinational company where their volume are huge, like they're doing mono flavor, like beer, for example. We have a liquor license. So all the mono flavor will be done locally at their brewers, right? And they would transfer to us all complications in productions, which is called the promotional items. So for them, doing 100,000 case a month of certain mix pack, which is a very huge complications for them and makes us living, because we have all the tools and the equipment to make sure that these products will be packaged properly according to the mix pack. It's called a a mixed flavor pack or rainbow pack, if you could see. And this is what we are currently producing now.
That sounds awesome. Honestly, packaging is its own beast. It is. Like, there's one thing to produce the product, it's another thing to like package it in a way that's just attractive and that makes sense for commercial use. So I can see why it's such a valuable option to use co-packers or co-packaging sites, because like I feel like it would take away a lot of stress for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? To be honest with you, 10 years ago, it didn't exist because people were buying Pepsi and they were buying 24 cans of Pepsi, 24 cases or cans of Sprites, right, to make it easy. And now customers, they don't want that. They want to go Costco and they want to having a mixed flavor, like 3 flavors in the same 24 pack. And not even 10 years ago that kind of products exist. So it's a very fast transformation, I would say, started 5-6 years ago. And unregulated market. And I know you want to go there, right?
We'll get to that.
All
we'll
right.
get to that. But again, I think that really does speak to the demand of the consumer as well, right? Because consumers, their shopping needs have changed so much in the last 10 years. So I think that makes a lot of sense that's why this like particular industry has really grown. Speaking about growth, so Patrick, Abeilles Busy Bees has had such amazing growth in such a short period of time. And a little birdie told me that your organization has recently celebrated something kind of famous, a magazine perhaps, about your growth. Do you want to explain about what I'm referring to?
Of course, we're so proud about that. It's unbelievable, the achievement of having this framed in our building. We won, in fact, the fastest growth company on the 500 list. It's called the Growth 500. And we were having 2 pages in the middle on the McLean magazine. Just amazing. From where we start few years back and having this today, it's a celebration for us, and especially during pandemic time period, because it's amazing.
Absolutely. That's huge. That's huge. So congratulations from BRCGS to you guys. We're so happy for you because that's a big accomplishment, like for anybody, regardless of being in a pandemic or not. And the fact that we are in one and you still managed to get on that list, that really speaks to your team, to your operations, to your leadership. So again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'll pass the information and all your comments to the good comments to our teams as well, because it's a teamwork.
Of course. I know it can be a little bit difficult to define, but can you tell me what the 3, top factors that you think really helped Busy Bees achieve this status?
Yeah, we applied the 3 very important factors. I would segregate into different categories. The first one would be PODC, which is planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. These aspects of the business, it's discipline itself. So a good planning, well organized, strict controlling would procure a lot of achievements in your organization. So we apply that on a daily basis. I would say a weekly basis to organizing our meeting with all our directors, right? And the second one, which 30 years ago was not, and today is very important, is human capital. We invest a lot in human capital and behaviors and all tendencies to, do a very good retention on our personnel. So we do like a lot of activities and procure a good safety environment as well, a bonus for participations bonus that we really focus on the human capital. And the last one, nevertheless, it's the certifications and achievement, providing high quality standard today, and especially in our world of packaging, doing business with multinational, QA quality, top of the line. I would say the most important thing in our business today is, yeah.
That's really good to hear. I think that's something that with certification, it can help you guys set that organization, as you mentioned, for your operations. I feel like it kind of sets the scene for that so you guys can build and work and then make it your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Today's world, it's a complex world, right? We have to elevate the barrier. We have to elevate from good to great. There's an old book saying that, from good to great. And it's a whole, yeah, we've all studied that, but now we have to really apply it because the world is changing. It's getting complex, right? It's get faster, leaner, and we need, something concrete to implement into our organizations to make sure we follow a good discipline, I would say.
Absolutely. That's a really good point that you bring up because, to keep up with demands and, as you said, like the industry, it's getting leaner, it's getting faster, but food safety or product safety or supply chain safety always stays the same. At the end of the day, you're always wanting to keep your product safe for the end consumer. So that has to stay rigid. But by having those things in place, you're able to really add that extra oomph, I think, to your commercial side.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The trigger is, how do we speak the same language of the multinational? That was my first trigger. Why would I show there with a good intention? You could be a very nice and very lean organizations. You could have a nice sales people doing a nice speech, but at the end of the day, the multinational will ask you, what's your procedures? What's your standard? How do you measure? How do you measure this? And this is the trigger who brought me into BRCGS certification.
And it makes sense, right? Because for multinational corporations, like they don't have the room to make mistakes. They have so many operations going on. They have so much at stake, I think. So it's so critical to have that portion. So it sounds like to me that by having that organized aspect, it can really benefit you to grow.
Yeah, and it's mandatory. As I said 5 years ago, that was not even a questions asked. They were transferring not traceable goods to our facility, and you could do a lot of things in a co-packing, but you could certainly not do food grade process without traceability. And this is how it came up to a very good organization structure with procedures in place. And the trigger would be, how do we speak the same language? And these people, multinational, they have tons, they have lawyers and conformity engineers in QA, and these guys would speak that language and make sure that you are conforming, understanding what we are talking about. And having a license, it gives you the license or a privilege to talk the same language, I would say.
Let me tell you, I'm sure Karen Betts, the head of our compliance, is like music to my ears. Like she would absolutely love that answer. So Patrick, we did touch base a little bit about the types of customers that you have. So from my understanding, with the nature of co-packing, your organization essentially offers packaging solutions to liaison between manufacturing sites and retailers, correct?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Can you define your product base and how exactly do you serve your customers, with that being said?
Okay, technically, we're not purchasing and reselling goods. The main principal activities of Abeilles Busy Bees would be co-packing. So receiving monoflavor in pallets, and our trigger would be investing in equipment, make sure we open the box, the bags, whatever the criteria that the customer requested us, and we're putting mixed flavor as a rainbow pack into a new sort of packaging. So technically, we're stuck in the middle of dealing with the multinational and serve another multinational, which is Walmart or Costco, for example. So we are the transmissions between two multinational and make sure that the product will be conform as a mixed flavor. So we do that, anything that you could possibly imagine, mainly in the sector, the food grade sector. We also doing servicing pharmaceutical, cosmetic as well, so with high regulations, with a different license, with a healthcare license, but mainly we're in a beer sector as well, and alcohol. Also, we have a secure facility to co-pack alcohol and beer as well.
All the things I like, cosmetics.
Yeah, exactly. We have a lot of
alcohol. Definitely.
We were very popular, I would say, during the pandemic, let's say.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, how did you see the potential in the storage and distribution standard of strengthening your safety management practices? Like, what about the standard specifically made that light bulb turn on in your head and say, yes, this is worth my team investing their time and resources?
Good question. It's a concrete case. It happens when I met with a customer a couple years back, 3-4 years ago. And one of our customers says, Patrick, you have to look at something different these days. Have you heard about ASEP and risk hazard management? I never heard about ASEPs before. So we start Googling it, ASEPs. We have no ideas. We were, co-packing stuff that we were not that much involved in a food grade. So that was not very important. I thought ASEP was for food processing, primary only. But I certainly realized that food processing, it's not only the first process, but the second process, co-packing, is also important, right? So we started Google that, and 2 options were offered to us. The first option was ISO for certification, right? We start looking at it with our engineer here, and I don't want to bash on ISO, but it was...
No.
I just want to say that it was not really... I didn't feel that it was for me, or feeling that was for our organizations. I felt like it was more industrial, complexity of implementing for industrial tools, but I certainly deviated from BRCGS quickly and find out that the words were proposed in the package of BRCGS was more in accordance of what we were planning to do with the ASEP and the GFSI, that we find out GFSI on the website. And then that group of family was more familiar with the terminology used with our clientele. So we starting to ask these people if they were familiar with GFSI, and this is we realized they were all GFSI. And then that was the trigger. To be honest with you, that was the real thing that we were needed to move forward to speak the same language of our customer.
I mean, it makes sense, right? With GFSI, that is the ultimate goal, because they are, in fact, the global, right, resources that everyone can abide by. So by undergoing a particular certification that GFSI recognizes is a great first step. But it's nice to hear that BRCGS just happened to be that extra little bit that you guys really needed that fit your needs, and you took the time to really evaluate, but it's about finding a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, what's the advantage, the competitive advantage that we providing to our organization? There's something you do for the customer, but you have to implement that later on into your culture, into your organization. And then that's the second level. You need to sell the package to your people, right?
Yes, absolutely. Culture is so big, and it's more of a conversation now, I'm finding, in the industry compared to in the past, because a lot of people are recognizing the importance of culture. But I think this is such a great example. It's like, if you can't communicate really what's needed from the standard, what your team need to be doing procedure-wise, and if they don't understand the language, that's going to impact your culture in a negative way. So it's really great to see that, like, this particular standard really worked for your culture, to have that strong communication, to have those strong practices, and to give you guys confidence, I think. So speaking of implementation, so when we're thinking about implementing the standard, what did you do exactly to get familiar with the terminology, the language, and how to actually apply it to yourself? Did you guys hire a consultant? Did you, hire a specific representative that knew the BRCGS standard inside out? Did you maybe have members of your technical team participate in particular training programs offered by BRCGS? Like, tell us, what did you do to get prepared?
First thing, we try to make it the process very easy for our people, right? We've said we're going to go step by step. We didn't have the proper building, by the way. We certified BRC a few years back, 2 years, 3 years back, in our previous building. So we bought a new building, And when we say we're going to transfer the building, the second certification was on the way. But the second is easier, right? When you know what's coming up ahead of you. But the first certification, people got a little bit tricky, scared a bit. It's like a big program, and how are we going to do this? And the first thing you need to reassure your people, saying we're going to go step by step. And again, believe it or not, we Googled that again. How could we get help on BRC certification, BRCGS certification? And tons of consultant pops up. And we said, oh, it's more popular than we thought. We said maybe multinational use their own people to do it. So how could we get the certifications in a good way with the good people? We just don't want to do something like just for the purpose of it. When we applied for BRCGS, we've said, how do we make it AA grade? And you need commitment to do that. And this is why I explain to our people, I says, if we do this, we need to get the AA grade because you're transparent, right? Anyone from anywhere around the world could Google your site and see how Busy Bees did into the exam. So we knew that. So we've said, how do we make sure that we implement that properly? And to be able to do so, to be honest with you, we use a consultant. And there's a bunch of people available onto that. And there's a firm to the auditors. And from the auditors, there's consultants. And it's a very familiar world of consulting. It is very easy, but I would strongly recommend using those people to bring you there. You need a plan. And with a proper plan, you could achieve that, no doubt.
It's amazing to hear. And you know what? You're right. There's a lot of consultants out there because it is a complicated world and it can be so difficult to navigate this by yourself. So why not get the expert help, someone who's dedicated to understanding these systems and have the critical skills to be able to analyze your particular space to help you apply it appropriately. So that's really cool though. I'm really interested to hear that your goal was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be on the top. Like, I'm not going to mess around. I'm going to do this right the first time. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but
I love it.
Yeah, that's a competitiveness into me, right? And it's always a matter of what could you bring to your organizations and what the certifications could bring to you for a better communication with your clients. I mean, the clients would know that you have a AA grade. And if you're dealing with Hershey's Canada, Nestle, it's our customer, tons of others, big names. And if they punch your name into the BRCGS website and they know that you have a AA grade, it means that you understand more than 96% of what's going on into your organizations. And I think this is something that we're very proud of, I would say. Yeah, thank you.
Good. I'm going to give you a little plug to allow you to toot your own horn. So as the CEO of Abeilles Busy Bees, what do you guys think you do really well or best?
Human capital. I think we understand the principle of having our people working with us, not for us. Sadly, two of our competitors this year during the pandemic were closed for a short period of time because the employees didn't show up at their facility. So it bothers me. To be honest with you, I said, wow, what about if it happens to me? Could you say? It's a possibility, right? What about if the people don't show up next morning? We have 150 employees or so. They are the most important thing in your organization. You could have a lot of money, a lot of beautiful buildings, a goodwill, good equipment, but the people who are operating your business, if they don't show up in the morning, which happened to my competitors, I felt, wow, now I really realized that how we invest in our people during the last 5 years pays off. Believe it or not, none of even one employee didn't show up. Everyone showed up and says, Patrick, we're going to do that together. And I would say, to answer your questions, human capital, and human capital. It's the most important thing. A lot of things also, for my background international, my mentor used to say, Patrick, you better have a backup plan, plan B, and as well a plan C, which sometimes we don't do, right? We know we have to do it, like a contingency plan. So I always have something in my pocket, like a poker game, like an ace or an ace of a king in my sleeve somewhere, somehow.
Sure.
But nothing better than a human capital, I would say. And the second would be the contingency plan. I would answer that.
That's really beautiful. And I say that sincerely because at the end of the day, who you're serving are consumers, right? And consumers are people. So if you didn't have that people aspect to your organization, it would kind of defeat the purpose of who you're trying to serve. So it's really, really great to see that you guys have that aspect. And clearly food safety culture is strong where you are because you treat your employees properly and because you have that trust and that team. It sounds like it's just you guys are just a solid team, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we try to transmit our values more than anything else. How could you motivate an employees not mixing almonds and peanuts? How could you do that if they do thousands of cases on monthly basis, weekly basis? How do you make that job interesting or so important? Because you have to make them realize that people could die out of it. The allergens was not in our language before. It's compliance, it's non-conformity, and they're part of the process very seriously. And if we do good, a customer will order more. Why wouldn't you use Busy Bees for that? Complexity product, let's say, and it becomes the rules and the norms into your organizations, and people, they have to know that they are important in that process, I would say.
I'm going to backtrack actually my question about your customers because it got me thinking. So is your customer base actually certified under a GFSI recognized program? Like, does that make an impact of who you do business with in order to avoid things like labeling mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. They all we notify that they all at the end they all GFSI in the GFSI group. We have a lot of a large scale customers, and then 97% are and the GFSI group and as well SAP, the ERP system. So that's the major thing we did into our organization. You could have best intentions in the world if you don't have a good ERP systems to do the traceability, and then it fails, right? You can't do that manually. So I would say that the first thing we did is the certifications as well for the standards of high quality. And yeah, to answer the question, they all GFSI group, yeah.
No, that makes sense because if you want that transparency, which clearly was important to you for your own internal team, it's logical to me that you would want to be able to speak the same language to your customers because then it would make communication so much more streamlined, and then you guys can always be on the same page too, because if you're following the same guidelines, it would also probably do things like reduce waste or like reduce unusable products and that kind of thing. So it would really maximize, I think, both of your operations to be on the same wavelength.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then you mentioned about mistakes, and there's nothing wrong doing mistakes, as long as you know you're doing mistakes, as you know that you have to measure your mistakes. And BRCGS, it's a process of measuring. So mistakes happen, but I would say it's very rare, but it happens within our four walls, and we certainly find out and treat is as a very important criteria to not happen again. So this is why we have certifications in place. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the key. I mean, like you said, mistakes are human. They happen, but it's really about what you do about it. The fact that it's like you have a little bit of a guideline or a rule of like, okay, let's actually measure and figure out where this is happening so we can prevent it in the first place. I think that's the major aspects that you need to be focused on. So that makes sense to me completely. I think it just makes sense to me that like with the mass production, it comes to you, and then you guys are the ones that organize it and package it beautifully and make it look attractive with the labeling and etc. And of course, there's a safety aspect to it, but you guys are doing the packaging, you're storing it, and then you're distributing it to the end retailer, which would then get into the hands of the consumer. So you guys are almost like the last stop in a sense, if you don't count the retailer as the last stop. Before it gets to the end consumer.
Oh yeah, we definitely are stuck, as I said previously, in a multinational or a brewer or doing a mass productions of brewing beers, and the customers is IGA or let's say Walmart or Costco, and we're the last one touching the products before it goes to the shelf.
Yeah, of course.
And Costco, they're very tough and regulated. If something is wrong, they will put everything in quarantine. They'll come here, they do the inspection, do the audit. And this is why we have with BRCGS the chance of having an addendum. It's called the Costco Addendum. And Costco is proud and feels secure, safe that noticing that we have that addendum in place because you have to select that when you have the audit. The auditor comes in. So we're fulfill the criteria of Costco. So we have the Costco Addendum. It's a very good example of how good we could be having the procedures in place, because these guys they're not joking with traceability of lot, let me tell you that.
Of course. And I feel like in your position too, by you having something like the BRCGS certification in place, you guys have all your processes, everybody knows what they're doing, and you have that strict traceability. You can have that confidence for Costco to come in and do those evaluations. And you're like, I'm good. I have my system. Take a look around. I got nothing to hide. You know what I mean? Like, it can help you build that confidence as well. And then Costco that confidence, because they know that when they go and do these checks, you guys already have all that system in place.
Yeah, and this is how the consultant people helps us to talk that language. Because Costco have strict requirements. Everyone wants to sell to Costco, by the way. They're all around the world, good payers, big volume, nice people. So everyone wants to do business with them. How do you reach out to them? It's quality. But all the people that I know that buying at Costco, it works. How do they do this without a non-conformity, bad product? Sometimes it happens, but you agree that Costco works? I mean, everything that you buy at Costco works.
Totally.
But it's not easy to get there. They have a specific language of quality. They have a special interpretations of quality. And this is, you have to find the trigger, what kind of language we talk over there. And our business boomed since we talk the same language, and none of our products are going back. You don't want a recall on your products. You don't want to do that.
No.
It takes 30 years.
That's the end goal.
Oh yeah, Paula, it takes 30 years to build your reputations and 5 minutes to destroy it. And I mean it.
Yep. Yeah. No, 100%. So, Patrick, what's one piece of advice that you would give to a new site considering the storage and distribution certification?
Don't get discouraged. If you...
Okay.
Yeah.
Expand.
I will. You know, sometimes you have to take it, eating an elephant, it's a piece by piece, right? You could do that, but you can't do that over a week period. Set up a proper plan. Fix the objective, how long you want to do this. There's no stress, there's no rush. Take your time. You better take more time, 6 months. People, they don't want to do it right now. BRCGS, it's not an overnight process. It's a lot of step milestones and procedures. It's also need a commitment from the high management. If you don't have the president, vice president, and especially the controller believe in your projects, it won't happen. The main issue here, you have to consider certifications and an investment, not an expense. If your brain could realize that $100,000 over 10 years period, it's only $10,000 a year. If you consider $100,000 over a year, it's $100,000 and not capitalizing. So, I mean, if you are putting a budget together if you are extended to this and believe it, and your people will believe it as an investment, I think that would be the best
best advice.
The best advice that I would give.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Is there anything else that you would like to share about Busy Bees that you think can help members of the supply chain be successful?
As I said, it's cultural. If we put rules in place, I'll tell you that 6 months after, rules were going to be broken. And I think it's a cultural movement. So if the people believe in a continuous way of your procedures as you're going to put it in place, they're going to believe in it. And I think the best advice would be that, focusing on the culture more than anything else, I would say.
Fantastic. Patrick, what's next for Abeilles Busy Bees?
I would love to go to Toronto, explore, market in Toronto. So we are in an acquisition mode. So we've bought 3 competitors so far. We are in the due diligence to another one still in Quebec right now. So by the end of the year, we'll probably acquire another one. But our dream is to expand our knowledge, I would say, throughout Canada. And why not ending in Miami, where the weather is better than here? And finally, why not Miami one day, or,
of course,
US. So the next step would be out west, probably Toronto, Vancouver, and finally ended up in Miami for my retirement plan.
All beautiful cities, all of them. I love Quebec so much. I go visit Quebec at least once a year because it's such a great place to go visit. But living in Ontario definitely has its perks. Toronto's awesome, and Vancouver is phenomenal as well. So all great choices. And I also love Miami. Who doesn't?
I went to school over there.
So I think that's a good retirement.
Yeah, I went to school. I did my bachelor degree in Miami, so I want to go back to the source, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So do you speak Spanish then on top of French?
Well, a bit, yeah. A little bit.
A bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could
Fair enough.
I'm
not going to pretend I speak French. I took 4 years of French and still I can barely order anything off a menu.
But it's a very common with Spanish, right? It's a Latin language. So
of course.
You speak Spanish, right?
Totally.
You're Latin
I
American.
do.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
A little bit, yeah. Amazing. Okay, well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today. And BRCGS, again, wishes Abeilles Busy Bees amazing success this year. Congratulations again on making Maclean's Canadian Business Top 500 fastest growing businesses in Canada. It's well deserved, and I really admire the creativity and the hustle.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on this show. As I said, it's my first podcast. I don't know how it turns out, but I feel young.
You did great.
Suddenly with a podcast thing.
Okay.
I tell my friend I do podcast today. Well, podcast? What is it? I said, well, I don't know yet, but we'll find out. Thank you very much for having me.
It was fun.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Of course. You're so welcome. Storage and Distribution Issue 4 is now available for enrollment. Register your interest to learn more and download a copy of our standard by visiting www.brcgs.com. You can review our on-demand webinar that speaks about the key changes between the standards, which is a great resource to turn to. If you have any questions about the podcast or for Patrick, please email podcast@brcgs.com. Different ways that you can find Abeilles Busy Bees. You can visit their website at www.abusy.ca. Their Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube are all Abeilles Busy Bees. And you can email info@abusy.ca or call their number 514-640-6941. So Patrick, I just have one final question for you before we end today. Will you be attending the Food Safety Americas virtual event?
Yeah, Claudia thought she provided me with that information. Find that very interesting, and you could count on me. We will be there attending that event for sure.
Amazing. So guys, if you listen to this podcast and you want a chance to chat with Patrick, make sure you get a ticket. The tickets are available on our website. We invite you to join our LinkedIn event group as well. We will provide a link in the description. And yeah, can't wait to see you there, Patrick. Thank you so much again. And let's use science for a safer world. And thank you for joining us on Confidently Compliant, a food safety podcast.